Hi, and welcome back to this video series or review of factoring quadratic equations or solving quadratic equations by factoring. All right, so we come back and we're going to look at the same two equations, but this time we're going to look at a shorter way to factor them. In the last video, we looked at factoring by grouping, so if you didn't have a chance to look at that, please go back and look at that. And then, of course, you'll think this way is probably a little bit easier. Well, why do we need this method? Well, sometimes when we have a lot of things to do, in order to factor, or especially to graph an equation, we want to use a shortcut method because that's going to save us some time with the factoring and not leave us to have so many steps. So it cuts us some steps out. All right, but it still makes mathematical sense, so let's look at it. I have f squared plus 12f plus 36. And if you want to change those to x's, that's completely up to you. Okay, we can see that this is given to us in standard form. So a is equal to 1, b is equal to 12, and c is equal to 36. Well, what I'm going to do is says find the factors of ax squared. Okay, well, we're going to pretend that this is 1x squared plus 12x plus 36 is equal to 0. Well, ax squared in this case, if a is 1 and b is equal to 12 and c is equal to 36 in this case, okay, well then ax squared, if I find the factors of it, it's going to factor out into x and x. Okay, so then now it says find the factors of c also. So find the factors of ax squared and c. Well, c factors out into 6 and 6. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is draw my brackets. Okay, I can go ahead and skip to the brackets part. I don't have to find m and p. So I know that my two factors of f or x squared are going to go in each bracket. And so x and x, and then 6 is also going to go in each bracket. So 6 and 6. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the outside and inside terms. I can look at example 1 at the original problem and see that since I have both positive signs here, that if the first sign is positive, then I know that at least one of my terms will use addition. And if the second one is also positive, then I know that both of them will use addition. If the first one is negative, I know that at least one will use a negative sign. And if the second one's negative, then I know that I have a negative and a positive. Okay, so that's just kind of a rule of thumb. But if you don't get that, you're welcome to test them out. So I'm going to put x plus 6 and x plus 6. Well, how do I know that for sure? Well, let's check the inside and outside terms. So I'm going to check 6 times x will give me 6x. And then, of course, in the middle, 6 times x. What's happening here? Excuse me a minute. 6 times x will also give me 6x. Okay, well, if that's true, remember that we learned when we learned how to multiply polynomials in the FOIL, using the FOIL method, that my inside and outside terms, those, when I add those up, that's going to give me my final middle term. So in this case, if I have 6x plus 6x, that's going to give me 12x. Well, that's exactly what I have in the middle here. So 12x and 12x. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I know these work, so I can set these equal to 0. Okay, so if those didn't work, you could either rearrange them or you could find two other factors of c that would actually work, where the inside and outside terms will give you the term that's in the middle of the original trinomial. Okay, so now I have x plus 6 equals 0 and x plus 6 equals 0, so I set them equal to 0. And then x plus 6, I don't know what's going on with my pen today, is equal to 0. Yep, there we go. Oh, there we go, finally. Okay, and then if that's the case, then of course x in this case is equal to negative 6, and x is also again equal to negative 6. So those are my two values of where the graph crosses the x-axis. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and quickly go over to the next problem. Okay, this time I'm going to do one video because this is a shortcut. And so I'm not going to go into as much detail in this one, but I'll just go ahead and work it out so that you can see. Okay, so in this case, I have 5x squared plus 34x plus 24, and that should be equal to 0. So now let's look at ax squared, so that's the first term, and the third term, or the last term, which is 24. Well, when I put my factors out, I have 5x, and then of course I'm going to have another x. Okay, so I know that x squared would factor into x and x, but the 5 has to go somewhere, so it's going to have to be attached to one of the x's. And then now let's look at 24. Well, what are some factors of 24 that will actually work? Okay, well, I have 6 and 4. 6 and 4 might work, or 4 and 6, and I can test both, or 8 and 3, 2 and 12, and then of course 1 and 24. And all of those are factors of 24. Well, now let's put our brackets down and see. Let's divide up this 5x and x, and then let's figure out what our other two numbers are. Okay, well, if I put a 24 in here, that would give me 24 and 1. That would give me 5 times 24. Well, if you're not sure what that is, then go ahead and multiply that out. Okay, so if I had 6 and 4, it looks like my middle term, my inside and outside terms, they should add up to 34x. So let's see if that's true. Well, here I get 20x, and here I get 6x. Well, 6x plus 20x is not 34x, so let's erase that and try some other terms. So sometimes it works the first time here, and sometimes it doesn't, but we just keep trying. All right, let's try first to rearrange the two and see if that works before we go on to two new terms. Because sometimes it's just a matter of rearranging. So I'm going to put the 4 here and the 6 here. And so I have 5x times 6 is 30x. And then 4 times x is 4x. And so if I add those two up, 4x plus 30x will give me 34x, which is exactly what I want in the middle. Okay, so those work. All right, so now we know that these terms work, so let's set the factors equal to 0. And then let's see which one. Well, I have a positive 34 and a positive 24, so I know that they both will be positive. So 5x plus 4 and x plus 6. 5x plus 4 is equal to 0. And then x plus 6 is equal to 0. Okay, so then 5x is equal to negative 4, and then x is equal to negative 6. So x is equal to negative 4/5, and x is equal to negative 6. So those are my two x values where the parabola or the quadratic crosses the x-axis. So those are my answers, my solutions. All right, I hope this has been helpful on shortcut methods. Remember that shortcut method takes a lot of practice, but the better you are at multiplication and the more you practice, you're finding your factors and the better you get at it. Hopefully this has been helpful, and see you in the next video.